She answered a phone booth that hadn't worked in 20 years. The phone booth had been dead for 20 years, so when it rang at midnight, Nora should have walked away. Instead, she picked up the broken receiver and heard a man whisper, "I was hoping it would be you." Nora Whitaker moved to Bellweather Cove on the first day of October, with one suitcase, 3 unpaid bills, and a heart that had forgotten how to believe in beginnings. The town sat on the edge of the Maine coast, where the sea was always grey, the houses always smelled faintly of salt, and the wind had a way of entering conversations like an old local with opinions. Nora had not planned to live there. She had only come to close her aunt's house, sign papers, sell what could be sold, and leave before the memories had time to learn her name. Her Aunt June had died in late summer, quietly, according to the lawyer, peacefully, according to the neighbor, alone, according to the truth no one likes saying. June had been Nora's mother's older sister, the last branch of a family that had once been loud and messy and full of women who sang while washing dishes. Now there was only Nora, 32 years old, former hospice nurse, former almost wife, former person who knew how to speak to the dying without becoming one of them inside. She had spent 7 years holding hands at the edge of other people's endings. Then her mother died in a hospital bed under fluorescent lights, and all the gentle words Nora had given strangers disappeared when she needed them for herself. 6 months later, she left nursing. 8 months later, her fiancé left her. 10 months later, Aunt June left her a narrow blue house above Bellweather Cove and a note written in shaky ink. "Come home when the silence gets too loud." Nora hated that the note understood her. The house stood on Willow Street, 3 blocks from the harbor and 1 block from the old train station. It was small, crooked, and painted a blue so faded it looked like the sky had been washed too many times. Inside, dust covered the shelves. Old quilts slept in cedar chests. Wine tapped at the windows. On the kitchen table, Aunt June had left 3 things: a brass key, a jar of sea glass, and a folded map of town with one place circled in red, the phone booth. Nora stared at the circle. Bellweather Cove still had a phone booth, though no one used it. It stood beside the old train station, a red wooden box with cracked glass panels and peeling paint. A little brass sign above the door read Bell System, though the line had been disconnected long before most children in town were born. According to the lawyer, Bellweather kept it because tourists liked taking pictures. According to the old men at the diner, the town kept it because removing it would require a committee, and committees were where practical ideas went to die. According to Aunt June's note, Nora needed to answer it. There was one sentence written beneath the map: "If it rings, do not be afraid." Nora laughed when she read it, not because it was funny, because grief had already made the world strange, and she had no room for haunted telephones. That first evening, she walked to the station anyway. The air smelled of rain and wood smoke. The harbor lights blinked through low fog. Boats knocked gently against the docks, and somewhere a dog barked as if offended by the weather. The old station was closed now. Its ticket windows were boarded. The tracks had been pulled up years ago and turned into a walking path with benches no one used after dark. The phone booth stood beneath a crooked street lamp, red, weather-beaten, ridiculous. Nora stepped inside. The glass was cold. The floor smelled of wet leaves. Someone had scratched initials into the wooden wall. E and T. "Maybe next time. Call me when you get there." Nora picked up the receiver. Dead. Of course it was dead. No dial tone, no static, nothing. She hung it back up and looked at her reflection in the cracked glass. Tired eyes. Wine-tangled brown hair. A woman who had come to sell a house and leave. "Nice try, Aunt June," she whispered. Then she went home. The phone rang 3 nights later. Nora was walking back from the grocery store with a paper bag hugged to her chest and rain beginning to fall sideways. Bellweather Cove had gone quiet early, the way small towns did when weather made everyone remember soup. The station street lamp flickered as she passed. Then the phone booth rang. Once, Nora stopped. The sound was soft and bright. Impossible. It rang again. She looked around. No one else was on the street. Rain ticked against the booth glass. The phone rang a third time. Nora's first thought was that someone had repaired it. Her second was that no one repaired anything in Bellweather Cove without discussing it for 6 months. Her third was Aunt June's note. If it rings, do not be afraid. The phone rang again. Nora stepped into the booth. Her hand hovered over the receiver. This is how women die in horror movies, she muttered. Then she picked it up. For 1 second, there was only static. Then a man's voice came through the line. Hello. Nora stopped breathing. The voice was young, warm, a little breathless, as if he had been running. Hello, he said again. Is someone there? Nora gripped the receiver. This phone does not work. A pause. Then the man said, That is a strange way to answer. You called a broken phone booth. I called the Bellweather station booth. It has not worked in 20 years. Silence. Rain ran down the glass. Then he laughed softly, not mockingly, nervously. Well, that would explain the connection. Nora should have hung up. She did not. Something about his voice held her there, not because it was charming, though it was, because it sounded lonely in a way she recognized. Who is this? She asked. Elias Reed. The name meant nothing to her then. It would mean everything later. I run the repair shop on Harbour Road, he said. Or I try to. Mostly I convince people that toasters have feelings and should not be thrown away. Nora stared through the rain. There is no repair shop on Harbour Road. Another pause. What? There's a candle store and a real estate office with a fake plant in the window. That cannot be right. It is right. I was there this morning. Nora swallowed. What year do you think it is? He did not answer at first. Then his voice came more carefully. 2004. The rain seemed to stop. Not outside. Inside Nora. She looked at the phone, at the cracked glass, at her pale reflection. No, she whispered. What year is it where you are? Elias asked. She almost laughed. She almost cried. Instead, she said, 2026. The line crackled. Neither spoke. Then Elias said, very quietly, That is not funny. I know. Are you part of some radio show? No. Did Tommy put you up to this? I do not know Tommy. That is exactly what someone who knew Tommy would say. Nora pressed her forehead against the glass. This was impossible. But grief had already taken so many sensible things from her. Sleep, appetite, a belief that tomorrow was automatically worth meeting. Why not take reality too? Outside. Lightning flashed over the harbour. Elias spoke again. If this is 2026, prove it. Nora looked out at the old station. The train tracks are gone. Silence. What do you mean gone? They turned them into a walking path. There is a plaque near the platform. That station still runs twice a day. Not here. His breathing changed. What else? The repair shop is gone. Harbour Road has a candle store called Salt and Wick. That building belongs to my uncle. Not anymore. Another long silence. Then he said, Do I still live there? Nora closed her eyes. I don't know. She heard him swallow. You do not know me. No. Then why did the phone ring for you? Nora looked at the scratched words inside the booth. Maybe next time. Call me when you get there. I don't know, she said. But that was not completely true, because a small part of her remembered Aunt June's map, and the notes, and the strange ache in her chest when Elias said his name. The line crackled again. I have to go, he said suddenly. Why? There is someone outside the shop. Elias, he paused. It was the first time she said his name. The line grew softer around it. Yes. Nora did not know what to say. Be careful sounded too intimate. This is impossible sounded useless. So she said, Will the phone ring again? A breath. Then his answer, I hope so. The line went dead. Nora stood inside the booth for several minutes, holding the receiver too, her ear, while rain washed Bellweather Cove into silver streaks. The next morning, she searched for Elias Reed. At the library, the internet barely worked. The printer made a sound like an injured animal, and the librarian, Mrs. Vale, watched Nora over half-moon glasses, looking for something local. Mrs. Vale asked. Just town history. That is what people say before finding trouble. Nora typed Elias Reed Bellweather Cove into the old computer. At first, nothing. Then a local archive page loaded. Bellweather Gazette, June 18, 2004. Her stomach tightened before she read the headline. Young repairman dies in storm accident. Elias Reed, 24, was killed late Thursday night when his truck left Harbour Bridge during severe coastal flooding. Nora stared at the screen. The article was short. Too short for a life. Beloved son of Margaret Reed, owner of Reed Repair on Harbour Road, volunteer at the community centre, known for repairing appliances for elderly residents at no charge, survived by mother, sister, and many friends. Nora scrolled down. There was a photograph. A young man standing outside a repair shop, sleeves rolled to his elbows, dark hair windblown, smiling like someone had just said his name from across the street. Nora touched the screen. Elias, the man from the phone. The man who had been alive in 2004. The man who had already been dead for 22 years. Her chair scraped back. Mrs. Vale looked up. Are you all right, dear? Nora forced air into her lungs. Yes. The leak sounded terrible. Mrs. Vale walked over slowly. Her eyes moved to the screen. Then her face changed. Oh, you knew him. Everyone knew Elias. The librarian's voice softened, in a way the dead often caused in small towns. He fixed my radio the week before he died. Wouldn't take payment. Said old radios deserve second chances. Nora looked back at the photograph. What happened? Storm. Bridge washed out. He should not have been driving. Where was he going? Mrs. Vale hesitated. No one ever knew for sure. Nora's skin prickled. What do you mean? The librarian removed her glasses and cleaned them with the edge of her cardigan. He told his sister he had to meet someone at the station booth. That it was important. She thought he was joking. Or maybe meeting a girl. Elias was always romantic in slightly impractical ways. Nora could not speak. Mrs. Vale continued. But the phone booth was dead by then. Line had been cut earlier that week after the storm damaged the pole. Poor boy drove through weather. No one should have driven through. Nora looked at the date again. June 17, 2004. That was the night he died. The night he had been going to the booth. The night he was supposed to meet her before he died. Nora returned to the phone booth that evening before midnight. She brought a notebook, a flashlight, a thermos of coffee, and the kind of fear that felt almost like faith. At 12:03, the phone rang. She picked up before the second ring. Elias, Nora. She froze. I never told you my name. You did. No, I didn't. A pause. Then he said, maybe not yet. The line hissed softly. Nora leaned against the booth wall. You died. Silence. Long. Heavy. Then he exhaled. That is not usually how I start conversations. You died on June 17, 2004. Harbour Bridge. Storm accident. He said nothing. Nora heard something in the background on his side. A radio. A dog barking. A world still alive around him. June 17th is next week, he said. In your time, yes. Nora closed her eyes. Her hand tightened on the receiver. Elias, you were going to meet someone at the station booth that night. Another silence. Then, quietly, was it you? The question reached across 22 years and stood inside the little red booth with her. Nora did not answer fast enough. Elias gave a soft laugh. Not happy. Astonished. That is insane. Yes. And yet here we are. Yes. The line crackled. Nora. She held the receiver closer. Do not drive to the station that night, she said. Whatever happens, do not go. But if I do not go, how do I know this is real? You know now. I know a voice. That should be enough. He was quiet. Then he said, you sound like someone who has lost too much to trust miracles. Nora swallowed. That is a very personal thing to say to a stranger. You do not feel like a stranger. Her eyes burned. She hated that. She hated how quickly his voice found places in her that had gone untouched for months. I looked you up today, she said. Was I handsome? Despite everything, she laughed. The sound surprised her. It had been so long since laughter came without guilt. You looked annoying. Then the photograph was accurate. You fix people's radios for free. Radios are important. Why? Because lonely people need voices in the room. Nora closed her eyes. The line hummed between them. What do you do in 2026? He asked. I used to be a nurse. Used to be. Yes. What happened? Nora looked out at the dark station platform. My mother died. His voice changed. I'm sorry. I helped people die 4 years. I thought that would make me better at losing someone. Did it? No. Elias said nothing for a moment. Then, softly, maybe being near other people's grief does not make yours smaller. Maybe it just teaches you how to sit beside it without running. Nora pressed her lips together. It was such a gentle thing to say. Gentle enough to hurt. Who taught you that? She asked. My father died when I was 16. Everyone kept telling my mother she was strong. I hated that. She was not strong. She was heartbroken and still had to make breakfast. Nora let out a slow breath. That might be the truest thing anyone has said to me in a year. Then I will try not to ruin it by saying something charming. You already did. Good. I like to work efficiently. She smiled into the receiver. That became the first real night. Not the first call. The first night that felt less like a haunting and more like a hand reaching through time. After that, the phone rang every night at 12:03. Nora stopped pretending she would not answer. She began living by the sound of it. During the day, she sorted through Aunt June's house, met neighbors, searched town archives, and learned the shape of Bellweather Cove into centuries at once. At night, she entered the red booth and spoke to Elias Reed in the last week of his life. He told her about 2004, the repair shop, his mother's lemon cake, his sister Annie, who wanted to leave town, but stayed because their mother needed someone. The community center, where he fixed lights, taught kids how to repair bicycles, and played chess with Mr. Donnelly, who cheated badly, and called it strategy. Nora told him about 2026, smartphones, streaming, the repair shop becoming a candle store, the station tracks becoming a walking path, his old community center becoming a luxury rental office. No one liked but everyone pretended was progress. Elias hated that. The community center is gone. Yes, that is where Mrs. Vale held winter coat drives. I think Mrs. Vale still would, if someone gave her a room. She's still alive. Yes. Very judgmental. Good. Judgment kept her young. The calls became longer, softer, more dangerous. Nora began to wait for his voice before sleeping. Elias began to write down things she told him and call them evidence for the impossible. Sometimes they talked about small things. Favorite soup, worst childhood haircut, whether ghosts would be more useful if they paid rent. Sometimes they talked about grief. He told her that when his father died, he had started fixing broken things because people praised usefulness more than sadness. She told him that after her mother died, she had stopped singing because every song seemed to know what she had lost. Sing one, Elias said one night. No, not even badly. Especially not badly. I promise to be very far away in time if that helps. It does not. A pause. Then he said, my mother sings when she's scared. Nora leaned against the booth glass. Does it help? No. But it tells the fear. It does not own the whole room. That stayed with her. The next day, Nora found Aunt June's old piano beneath a sheet in the parlor. It was out of tune, dusty. Several keys stuck. She sat before it for nearly an hour before pressing one note, then another. The house did not break. Neither did she. On the fifth night, Nora found the first clue that history had lied. She was reading Elias's archived article again when she noticed a second story printed beneath it. Old cannery fire ruled electrical accident. Same night, same storm. The Bellweather cannery had burnt hours before Elias's crash. Officially, no one died, but several residents were injured, including 3 children from the apartment rooms above the old loading bay. Nora asked Mrs. Vale about it the next morning. The librarian's mouth tightened. That fire was bad business. What happened? Old wiring, they said, but people knew the building should have been condemned. The owner kept renting rooms upstairs anyway. Poor families, seasonal workers, people no one listened to until flames were coming through the floor. Who owned it? Harbour Development Trust. Nora later discovered that the trust was controlled by Martin Keane, a local businessman who later became mayor. His son now owned the real estate office on Harbour Road, the one where Elias's repair shop had once stood. That night, Nora told Elias. He went quiet. "I was at the cannery today," he said. "What, Mrs. Alvarez asked me to fix a fuse box in the upstairs hall. It smelled like burned plastic." Nora gripped the receiver. "Elias, I told Mr. Keane the wiring was dangerous. He said I was trying to scare tenants for repair money. The fire happens on June 17th, the night I die, yes." He breathed out slowly. "And I drive to the station after." That is what the article says. But if the cannery burns first, why would I leave? Nora closed her eyes. The answer came quietly. "Because you were coming to meet me." The line fell silent. Then Elias said, "I do not think I would leave people in a burning building to meet a voice." Nora wanted to believe that. She did believe it, which meant the article was wrong, or incomplete. "Maybe you were not driving to me first," she said. "Maybe you were driving after." After what? After the fire. After saving them. Then why did no one say that? Nora thought of the short article. The simple accident. The dead young man, reduced to a bad decision in a storm. Maybe someone needed your death to stay simple. The next day, Nora went to the town records office. The clerk did not want to help. Nora had worked in hospice. She knew how to wait longer than uncomfortable people expected. Eventually, she obtained the 2004 fire report. It had missing pages. Of course it did. But one witness statement remained misfiled behind plumbing permits. A 10-year-old boy named Mateo Alvarez had told police that Elias Reed came to the cannery before the fire, shouted for everyone to leave, and carried his little sister down the back stairs. The statement was never mentioned in the final report. Nora found Mateo in 2026, living 2 towns over, running a bakery with his wife. He was 32 now. When she showed him Elias's photograph, he stared at it for a long time. Then he said, "He saved my sister." Nora's heart began to pound. Why was that not in the article? Mateo wiped his hands on his apron. "My mother tried to tell people. No one wanted to hear it. Mr. Keane said Elias caused panic and damaged property. Then Elias died that night. And everything became about the bridge. What happened after? Keane got insurance, sold the land, became mayor later." Mateo looked at the photograph again. "My sister still has the little wooden bird he carved for her while we waited outside, in the rain." Nora could barely speak. "Do you remember anything else?" Mateo nodded slowly. He kept saying someone told him. A woman. He said a woman on the phone told him the building would burn. Nora sat down hard. The bakery sounds moved around her. Coffee machine, door chime, people ordering bread, life continuing, as if time had not just folded in her hands. That night, when the phone rang, Nora answered with the fire report spread on the booth floor. "I know why you die," she said. Elias did not make a joke. "What happened? You go to the cannery. You save people. Then you drive toward the station during the storm. To meet you, yes. And the bridge washes out, yes. Then the solution is simple." Nora closed her eyes. "Do not say it. I do not go to the station." Her throat tightened. "If you do not, maybe the phone stops, maybe." "You sound very calm for someone discussing disappearing from my life." "Nora, no. Do not do that." "Do what?" "Say my name like you were already leaving." The line hummed. On his side, she heard rain begin. Not the deadly storm yet. Another rain. A softer one. "I do not want to die," Elias said. The honesty broke her. "I know. I also do not want the last good thing in my life to be the reason I do." Nora pressed her hand against her mouth. Elias continued. "Maybe the phone did not connect us, so I could meet you that night. Maybe it connected us, so you could stop me from trying. Tears slipped down her face. That is unfairly noble. No, I am terrified. That made her laugh and cry at once. Good, she whispered. Stay terrified. It might keep you alive. They began planning. Nora became his map of a disaster that had already happened. She studied tide charts, old weather archives, fire reports, bridge records, and insurance claims. Elias became the hands in the past. He checked the cannery fuse box, found illegal wiring, found the blocked back stair, found a gas heater installed beneath rotting wood, found that Keane had ignored every warning because repairs cost money and tenants had none. On June 16th, Elias stole the spare key from the office and copied it. On June 17th, he would evacuate the building before the storm trapped them. Call the fire department before entering. Nora said, I will. Do not be heroic. I run a repair shop. Heroism is terrible for invoices. I'm serious, so am I. I will be careful, Elias, I promise. She wanted to trust the promise, but she had held to many dying hands to believe promises could always fight physics. On the final day, Nora woke to a town already changed by dread. The sky over 2026 was clear, bright, and painfully ordinary. People bought coffee. Tourists photographed the harbor. Children rode bikes past the dead phone booth. No one knew that somewhere in 2004, rain clouds were gathering over the same sea. Nora spent the day collecting every piece of Elias she could find. His photograph, the witness statement, the article, a small obituary card from the library archive. Mrs. Vale saw her holding it and said quietly, You have taken an interest in that boy. Nora did not correct her. He deserved more than a paragraph, she said. Mrs. Vale's face softened. Yes, he did. At dusk, the librarian handed Nora a small envelope. June asked me to give you this if you ever started asking about Elias Reed. Nora stared. Aunt June knew. She knew many things and explained almost none of them. Inside the envelope was a letter. Nora, if you are reading this, then the booth found you. I answered it once too, years ago. But the call was not for me. I heard only a man crying in the rain, asking for a woman named Nora. I spent half my life wondering if time had a mercy hidden somewhere inside its cruelty. Maybe that mercy is you. Do not waste it being afraid. Love, June. Nora read the letter 3 times. Then she walked to the phone booth before dark. At 12:03 in 2026, the phone rang. In 2004, Elias answered from the repair shop. The storm was already loud on his side. Nora could hear it through the line. Tell me where you are, she said. Shop. I have the key, flashlights, blankets, first aid kit. Fire department said they'll send someone, but the roads are already flooding. Do not wait for them. I know. You have to get Mrs. Alvarez first. She will not leave without the children. Apartment 3. Mateo and Lucia. I remember. If the front stairs are smoking, use the backloading door. It sticks at the bottom. I filed it down this morning. Despite everything, Nora smiled. Of course you did, Nora. Her heart stopped. What? If the call cuts out? No. Listen. No. If it cuts out. I need to say this now. She pressed the receiver hard to her ear. Rain and static filled the line. Elias's voice came through softer. I spent most of my life fixing broken things because it was easier than admitting I was one of them. Then a woman from tomorrow called a dead phone booth and made me feel like the world had not finished with me yet. Nora cried silently. I wish I had met you in ordinary time, he said. You did, Nora, you did. This counts, a breath. Then his voice, almost breaking. Then I am very glad I answered. Static surged. Elias, I have to go. Do not go to the station after. I won't. Say it. I will not go to the station. Do not take Harbour Bridge. I will not take Harbour Bridge. After the cannery. Go home. He was quiet. Elias, I want to hear your voice again. You will. I might not. You will. The line crackled violently. On his side, someone shouted. Elias swore. The fire started early. Nora stood straight. Go. I'll call from the booth after. No. Nora. No. Do not call from the booth. Do not come here. Survive first, the line hissed. Then his voice came. Steady now, all right, Elias. Yes. She closed her eyes. I am waiting for you on the other side. The line went silent. For the next hour, Nora stayed inside the phone booth, holding the dead receiver, listening to nothing, no ring, no voice, only her own breathing and the sound of 2026 traffic several streets away. At 1:18, something changed. The booth light flickered. Once, twice. The old glass rattled. The carved initials blurred. For a moment, Nora saw rain on the station platform. Not the soft rain of her present. The violent storm of his. A man running through water with a child in his arms. A woman screaming. Fire behind windows. Then Elias, soaked. Black smoke on his face. Alive. He looked toward the phone booth across yours. Not seeing her. Feeling her, perhaps. Then the vision vanished. The booth went dark. Nora ran to the library at dawn. She did not wait for opening hours. She knocked until Mrs. Vale appeared in a robe and boots, holding a rolling pin like a weapon. Nora Whitaker. Someone had better be dead or born. I need the archives, Mrs. Vale stared at her face, then unlocked the door. The old computer took forever. Nora's hand shook so badly she missed up the date twice. Bellweather Gazette, June 18, 2004. The page loaded. The headline was different. Repairman saves 6 in cannery fire. Nora stopped breathing. Her eyes flew over the article. Elias Reed, local repair shop owner, helped evacuate residents from the upper rooms of the old cannery Thursday night, before an electrical fire destroyed the building. Among those rescued were Maria Alvarez and her children Mateo and Lucia. Reed was treated for smoke inhalation and minor burns. No deaths were reported. Nora covered her mouth. Mrs. Vale leaned over her shoulder. Oh my, she whispered. Nora scrolled down. The bridge accident article was gone. No obituary. No photograph of Elias as a dead man. No paragraph pretending a life was simple. Instead, a second article appeared years later, 2009. Reed Community Center opens on former cannery site. Then 2015. Local repairman leads storm safety project. Then 2020. Bellweather honors Elias Reed for 20 years of service. Nora stared at the words until they blurred. He had lived. He had lived. The phone booth did not ring that night, nor the next. Nora went anyway. Every evening, she stood inside the little red booth and picked up the receiver. Dead. No static. No impossible voice. After a week, she stopped crying before walking there. After 2 weeks, she learned that surviving a miracle still hurt when the miracle took someone away. After 3 weeks, she began restoring Aunt June's house, not to sell, to stay. Bellweather Cove did not feel like a place she had come to close anymore. It felt like a place where the past had opened a door and trusted her not to run. She reopened Aunt June's front room as a small community space. At first, she called it the Blue House. Then Mrs. Vale said that sounded like a support group for depressed painters. So Nora called it Second Chances. There was coffee on Tuesdays, soup on Thursdays, old books by donation, a piano in the corner, badly tuned but patient. People came slowly. An old widower who needed somewhere warm to read the newspaper. A single mother who cried in the kitchen because no one had asked if she was tired. Teenagers who pretended they were only there for Wi-Fi. Nora began singing again. Only sometimes, only softly. The first time, her voice cracked halfway through the song. No one laughed. That was how she knew she was in the right place. October turned to November. Leaves blew down Willow Street. The phone booth remained dead. Then one evening, Mrs. Vale came into Second Chances with a strange expression. There is someone asking for you. Nora looked up from the piano. Who? The librarian smiled in a way that made Nora's heart begin to pound. He said to tell you he finally got there. Nora stood so quickly the piano bench scraped the floor. She walked outside. The sun was setting over Bellweather Cove, turning the harbor gold. A man stood near the red phone booth. He was older than the photograph. Of course he was. 46 now, maybe 47. There were silver threads in his dark hair, a small scar near his left eyebrow, lines at the corners of his eyes that came from smiling, squinting at weather, and surviving what should have killed him. He held a brown paper bag in one hand. His other hand rested lightly on the phone booth door. Nora stopped on the sidewalk. The whole town seemed to quiet around her. He looked at her and smiled, not like a stranger, not like a ghost, like a man who had heard her voice in the dark and spent 22 years walking toward it. "Nora," he said. His voice was the same, deeper, older, alive. She tried to speak. Nothing came. He lifted the paper bag slightly. "I brought lemon cake. My mother said if I ever met the woman from the phone booth, I should not show up empty-handed." Nora laughed. It broke into a sob halfway through. Elias walked toward her, slowly, stopping a few steps away. He did not touch her. Of course he did not. "May I?" he asked. Nora crossed the distance herself. She threw her arms around him. Elias caught her gently, one arm around her back, the other holding the lemon cake away from disaster. For a moment, neither said anything. Nora pressed her face against his coat and cried. He was warm, real, there, not a voice in static, not a name in an archive, not a tragedy she had failed to prevent. Elias held her like a man holding the proof of his own impossible life. "I waited," he whispered. She laughed through tears. "For 22 years, not every minute. I had a shop to run." She pulled back and hit his chest lightly. He smiled. "But yes," he said softly, "in the ways that mattered." Nora looked at him. "Did you remember everything?" "Yes, the calls, every word." "And when history changed?" His expression shifted. "I did not feel the world change. I just lived. I woke up the morning after the fire with smoke in my lungs, bandages on my hands, and your voice in my head telling me not to take the bridge." His eyes softened. "So I didn't." Nora's tears started again. Elias lifted one hand, then stopped. "May I?" She nodded. He wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. The touch was gentle, human, devastating. "What happened to the phone?" she asked. "It never rang again for me." "Me neither." "Maybe it did what it came to do." Nora looked at the booth. The red paint was peeling. The glass still cracked. The receiver still dead. But it no longer looked haunted. It looked tired after doing one good thing. Elias glanced toward Second Chances. "That used to be June's house. It still is, in some ways. She knew about you." "I know. She told me once, years after the fire. That time had strange manners, and I should be patient." Nora laughed softly. "That sounds like her." She also said, "If I hurt you, she would haunt my toaster." "That sounds more like her." They stood there as the last light faded. No grand music, no magical explanation, only a small town, an old phone booth, and two people who had found each other through the narrowest opening time could make. Elias looked at her carefully. "I do not want you to feel trapped by a story we did not choose." Nora's throat tightened. "What do you mean?" "I mean I have loved your voice for 22 years. But you met me 3 weeks ago, across grief, panic, and a broken phone. You owe me nothing because I survived." The words moved through her slowly, kindly. He was giving her a door, not a claim. Not destiny as a cage, a door. Nora took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm, steady, older than the voice she knew. Somehow still him. "I spent a year thinking love was just another name for losing someone eventually," she said. Then a dead phone rang, and a man who should have been a memory kept answering. Elias listened. She smiled through tears. "I don't know what this is yet." His thumb moved gently over her hand. "That is all right. But I know I want you to come inside and eat lemon cake with me." His smile widened. "That is a very serious commitment." "It is. I do not share cake lightly." "Then I accept with reverence," she laughed. This time, the sound did not break. They walked into Second Chances hand in hand. Mrs. Vale saw them from the counter and immediately pretended not to cry. Mateo Alvarez, who had driven in with bread from his bakery, stared at Elias and said, "You still owe my sister a bicycle lesson." Elias grinned. "She still falls, like a professional." The room filled around him, not with shock, with recognition, because in this version of the world, Elias Reed had lived long enough to be loved by many people. Nora watched him greet them. Mrs. Vale, Mateo, old Mr. Donnelly, still cheating at chess in a corner. People whose lives had grown around the fact that he stayed. And for the first time, she truly understood. She had not saved only one man. She had saved the years he gave away afterward, the repairs, the community center, the storm warnings, the children taught to fix bikes, the old radios repaired, so lonely people could hear voices in the room. One life was never only one life. It was 1,000 small kindnesses traveling forward. Later that night, after everyone left, Nora and Elias stood in the parlor beside the old piano. Rain tapped gently against the windows. Not a storm, just rain. Elias looked at the keys. You sing, sometimes. I asked you once. You did. You refused. I was very mysterious. You were very stubborn. She sat at the piano. The old keys were still slightly out of tune. She played a simple melody, her mother's favorite. Her voice trembled on the first line, then steadied. Elias stood beside the piano and listened as if listening were a form of prayer. When the song ended, Nora looked up. He had tears in his eyes. You tell the fear it does not own the room, he said. She smiled softly. I learned that from someone. He sat beside her on the bench, carefully. Leaving space, Nora closed the space herself. Their shoulders touched. No static, no glass, no 22 years between them. Only breath, warmth, rain. Elias looked at her mouth, then back at her eyes. Nora, yes, I would very much like to kiss you. Her heart beat once, hard and full. Then ask me properly. His smile trembled. May I kiss you? Yes. Their first kiss in the same time was soft, almost shy. A question finally answered without a telephone line struggling to hold it. Nora touched his face. Elias leaned into her hand like a man who had waited years to become real beneath it. The kiss deepened slowly, not with desperation, with gratitude, with wonder, with the ache of every night they had spoken across impossible distance, and every morning that had brought them closer without letting them touch. When they parted, his forehead rested against hers. I was hoping it would be you, he whispered. The first words he had ever said to her. The words from the booth. Nora closed her eyes. It was outside. The red phone booth stood beneath the street lamp, silent at last. No longer broken. No longer waiting. Just resting after carrying a miracle across time. Years later, Bellweather Cove kept the booth. Not because tourists liked it. Not because committees were slow. Because people began leaving notes inside. Small ones, folded into the cracks in the wood. Call me when you get there. I miss you. I forgive you. I am still here. Some people said it was silly. Some said it was sacred. Nora never argued either way. On winter evenings, she and Elias would walk past the station after closing Second Chances. Sometimes they held hands. Sometimes they carried groceries. Sometimes they stopped so Elias could fix the booth door, though it never worked again, and he insisted broken things still deserved care. One night, a little girl asked Nora if the phone booth was magic. Nora looked at Elias. He looked back at her. Then Nora smiled. No, she said. Not exactly. The girl frowned. Then what is it? Elias crouched beside the child and said, It is a reminder of what? He looked toward the sea, where the old cannery lights had once burned and where a community center now glowed warm against the dark, that sometimes, when someone answers with kindness, even the past can change its mind. The little girl considered this. Then she nodded as if that made perfect sense. Maybe it did. Because love was not always fireworks. Sometimes love was a voice through static. A warning in the storm. A hand held after 22 years. A song sung again after grief. A broken phone answered by someone brave enough to believe that one life, saved in time, could carry mercy into all the years that followed.